There is a story you believe you know, a world of polished castles and reassuring smiles where innocence is the only currency. But behind this gleaming facade, a different kind of magic is at work. One not of fantasy, but of meticulous, invisible control. The countless secrets revealed are merely the surface, diversions for the curious. They point to hidden symbols, but remain silent on the hidden architecture of the mind. They celebrate engineering marvels, but neglect to mention the engineering of human behavior itself. This is the reality, veiled for decades behind a curtain of manufactured joy. Forget what you thought you knew. To walk through these gates is to surrender your autonomy. The belief in free will is the most powerful illusion of all. Here, every step you take, every glance you cast, even the air you breathe, is part of a grand design. It begins with the most obvious element, the architecture. The main thoroughfare leading toward the iconic castle seems impossibly long upon arrival, an epic journey beckoning. Yet, at the end of the day, the path to the exit feels surprisingly short. This is not a trick of a tired mind. It is a technique known as forced perspective. The first floors of the building stand at full scale. The second are constructed at a 5/8 scale, and the third floors and rooftops are a mere 1/2 their proper size. Your brain is deceived, creating a false sense of distance, stretching the anticipation. On your return, the same illusion works in reverse, compressing the space, making the journey out seem less daunting. But this manipulation of space is elementary compared to the mastery of color. You have likely never noticed the trash receptacles, the utility buildings, or the service fences. This too is by design. The corporation developed two unique proprietary colors: a dull, unassuming grey-green, known as go-away green, and a faded, forgettable grey-blue called bye-bye blue. These pigments are not merely camouflage, they are psychological voids, scientifically formulated to be so profoundly unremarkable that the human eye instinctively glides over them, literally erasing them from your field of vision. You look directly at them, but you do not see them. The storytellers decide what is worthy of your gaze. And finally, there is the air itself. That sudden, inexplicable craving for popcorn is not your own. It is an impulse, delivered on the air by machines hidden in plain sight, devices known as smellitizers. They atomize scents engineered to evoke specific emotions and desires. The aroma of vanilla on Main Street is not from a bakery. It is a broadcast, designed to trigger feelings of comfort and security. The salt-laced sea breeze on the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction is not simple ventilation. It is a carefully composed aromatic score. They command your sight, your spatial awareness, your sense of smell, and in doing so, they command the most sacred territory of all, your memory. The experience you carry home is not simply a recollection of a day spent. It is a product, meticulously designed, packaged and sold, an emotion built to last. A perfect memory, not of what was, but of what you were made to feel. When the last guest has gone home and the great gates of the park swing shut, the storybook fantasy dissolves. A different world awakens, one that operates in the shadows with its own secret agents. From its very inception in 1955, the Magic Kingdom faced a persistent and deeply ironic problem. In the empire built by a mouse, his real-world brethren, rats and mice, had become...
Welcome to my channel. If you're fascinated by hidden truths, lost civilizations, and unsolved mysteries, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and...
Enemy number one. The vast park, with its endless supply of food, was a paradise for rodents. Traps and poisons were not only inefficient, they were a stain on the pristine image. The solution, when it came, was not engineered. It was discovered. One night, within the walls of Sleeping Beauty's castle, maintenance workers found a colony of feral cats. But instead of being evicted, they were hired. Today, a force of nearly 200 spayed and vaccinated felines patrols the park grounds after dark. They are provided with feeding stations and veterinary care. Their single mission? To keep the rodent population in check. They are an elite nocturnal squadron, a secret you were never meant to know. But they are not the only covert employees. Observe the crowds. That man dressed as a typical family father in shorts and a sun hat, the one whose gaze lingers a little too long, who scans his surroundings with unusual intensity, he may not be a tourist. He may be an undercover officer. To preserve the fantasy, the sight of a uniformed presence is avoided at all costs. Instead, a plainclothes contingent moves silently through the masses. They de-escalate conflicts, thwart theft, and manage unruly behavior with such discretion that most guests remain blissfully unaware. They are the invisible guardians of a perfect illusion. And what of the grandest spectacle, the nightly fireworks? What happens when the show is cancelled by a sudden turn in the weather? Thousands of dollars in pyrotechnics cannot simply be wasted. But federal safety regulations forbid the storage of armed explosives until the next day. So once the weather clears, even if it is 3 o'clock in the morning, the show must go on. For an audience of almost no one. The night's only spectators are the cleaning crews, the security guards, and the hunting cats. The sky erupts in an explosion of color over a silent, empty park. A stark reminder that magic is, above all, a strict adherence to protocol. Yet the park's deepest secret is hidden in plain sight. In the heart of New Orleans Square sits an unremarkable door, marked only by a small plaque, 33. To 99% of those who pass, it is merely part of the scenery. To the global elite, it is the entrance to Club 33, one of the most exclusive private clubs on the planet. Walt Disney himself conceived of it as a quiet, opulent space to entertain investors and dignitaries. The origin of its name is a mystery, breeding endless speculation. Some say it is simply the building's address. Others claim it honors the 33 original corporate sponsors of the park. A more esoteric theory suggests a connection to the 33rd degree of Freemasonry, a nod to the secret societies rumored to have backed the Disney enterprise. Gaining entry is a feat reserved for a select few. It serves as the ultimate testament to the park's design. The most potent illusions are not built on fantasy alone, but on layers of unseen reality, on a complex machinery working tirelessly just beyond our view. The magic is not that the illusion exists, but that its secrets are so perfectly kept. The waiting list stretches for 15 years. The initiation fee reaches tens of thousands of dollars, and the annual dues are comparable to the cost of a new car. Inside is a world apart. Exclusive restaurants and bars where, unlike the rest of the park, alcohol is served. It is a place where one might find a Hollywood star or a member of a royal family at the next table. This is a realm of absolute privilege, hidden in plain sight. But there is another side to this gilded coin. What becomes of those who break the rules of this magic kingdom? For them, an equally legendary but far darker place awaits: the Disney jail. It is not, of course, a true prison of iron bars. It is a temporary holding center where security escorts transgressors, from common shoplifters to disorderly guests. Actress Blake Lively, detained in her youth for attempting to use a counterfeit ticket, described it as a series of stark white rooms where you are held until the arrival of actual police. The corporation does everything in its power to conceal any intrusion of the real world. Conflicts are resolved quietly behind closed doors, and so, while some pay fortunes for inclusion, others are silently escorted from the park, their removal a swift and silent process.
Stay with me, because what comes next has been hidden for a very long time, and only a few people know the truth behind it.
Procedure designed to protect the illusion of universal happiness. Two worlds separated by a single wall. A world of absolute access and a world of instant expulsion. In 1976, Disney opened its first water park, River Country. It was an idyllic slice of rustic Americana, complete with a natural-fed lake, water slides, and rope swings. Thousands of families spent the best days of their vacations there. Then, in August of 1980, everything changed. An 11-year-old boy swimming in the park's lake died. The cause was horrific. A rare amoeba, Naegleria fowleri, contracted from the water, had consumed his brain. It was not an isolated incident. Over the years of the park's operation, 2 more teenagers would drown in its waters. Disney carried on, but its reputation was irrevocably stained. In 2001, the park was closed for temporary maintenance. In 2005, the closure was made permanent. But it was not demolished. River Country was simply abandoned. Today, it is a ghost park. Nature is slowly reclaiming what was once a symbol of joy. Slides are choked with moss. Pools have devolved into swamps. Urban explorers who trespass on the property speak of an eerie stillness, of lights that flicker to life in the dead of night, of faint music drifting from decaying speakers. Yet the dangers lurking in the waters of this world did not vanish with River Country. Throughout the resort's lakes and canals, an estimated 1.5 million alligators reside. For a long time, the corporation chose not to publicize this fact to avoid alarming its guests. That silence was shattered in 2016. A 2-year-old boy playing at the water's edge near the elite Grand Floridian Hotel was taken and killed by an alligator before the eyes of his parents. The curated fantasy, no matter how perfect, can never fully contain the raw, unpredictable forces of the world it seeks to replace. For behind the highest walls of the Magic Kingdom, nature, in its most primal form, is always waiting. It was only after the tragedy that the warning signs appeared, a stark acknowledgement of the predator lurking just beneath the surface of the placid resort waters. A special service was created, tasked with capturing and removing the ancient reptiles. In the years that followed, more than 200 alligators were culled from the tourist zone. But the question lingers in the humid air: how many still remain? Against the backdrop of such visceral events, the park's mortality statistics cease to be mere numbers. Since its grand opening, a grim tally has been kept. More than 80 people have perished within the park's gates. The causes are varied, from cardiac arrests on extreme attractions to tragic accidents involving the staff.
Wait, this is not the full story. The most important part is just beginning, and it changes everything we thought we knew.
Each death is an event the corporation attempts to obscure, to bury beneath layers of public relations. In the happiest place on earth, no one is supposed to die. Many know the Haunted Mansion, a cornerstone of Gothic fantasy, but few suspect that some of its inhabitants are more than just special effects. The most infamous tale involves a small boy. One day, a woman, taking photographs inside the attraction, reviewed her pictures. There, in one frame, was the haunting figure of a child peering out from behind a doom buggy. She had no memory of a boy being anywhere near her. Later, park employees recalled an incident from the 90s. A distraught mother had pleaded with them for permission to scatter the ashes of her 7-year-old son inside the mansion. It had been his favorite ride. While Disney officially denied her request, rumor insists she fulfilled her son's final wish in secret. Since then, the ghost of a little boy has become a permanent resident of the mansion. His is not an isolated case. The scattering of human remains in the parks has become a clandestine tradition, an underground ritual that security services have battled for decades. But what if the phantoms are not only the guests, but also those who built the magic? We travel now to the Pirates of the Caribbean. During its initial construction, designers felt the animatronic skeletons lacked a certain realism. A persistent rumor, one corroborated by numerous former employees, suggests that the first skeletons visitors laid eyes upon were genuine. They were allegedly provided by the medical center at the University of California. Over time, they were replaced with facsimiles. Yet the legend holds that one human skull remains, still resting on the headboard of a bed in one of the ride's elaborate scenes. Even without real bones, the attraction has its own guardian spirit. They call him George. As the story goes, he was a construction worker who died during the ride's assembly. Now his ghost inhabits the space. Every morning, without fail, employees greet him. "Good morning, George." And every evening, "Good night, George." To neglect this ritual is to invite chaos. The attraction inexplicably breaks down. Boats stall in the water, the audio cuts out, the animatronics freeze in their mechanical poses. This is not treated as mere superstition, but as a mandatory operational procedure. Other spirits are less benevolent. On Space Mountain, in the disorienting dark, riders sometimes encounter a ghost known as Mr. One-Way. He materializes in the empty seat next to a lone passenger, a silent companion for the duration of the journey. He rides the entire circuit, only to vanish into the blackness an instant before the final station. The Magic Kingdom is built on meticulous design, on the careful curation of joy. Yet woven into its very fabric are these other stories, of tragedy, of loss, and of rituals born from grief. It seems that no matter how high the walls, the profound, unpredictable, and sometimes haunting realities of human experience always find a way inside. Within the looming architecture of the Tower of Terror, a spectral figure is said to dwell. It is the ghost of a park employee, a man who suffered a fatal heart attack on one of the ride's platforms. His form, they say, is sometimes captured by surveillance cameras in the dead of night, a lonely shape in an empty building. This is not merely a tale spun for tourists. It is a living folklore, passed in hushed tones among the park's own staff. A story of those who came to this kingdom of fantasy and, in a way, never truly left. For this place does not simply create fairy tales, it rewrites history, supplanting a harsh and inconvenient truth with a comfortable and profitable fiction. The most flagrant examples of this revisionism concern real people, whose actual lives were consumed and transformed into vibrant musicals. Consider Pocahontas. The animated film presents a sweeping love story between an adult indigenous princess and the valiant Captain John Smith. The reality is far darker. Pocahontas was a childhood nickname. Her true name was Amonute, or Matoaka, and when the English colonists arrived in her lands, she was not a woman of 18 years, but a child of only 10. There was no romance with the 27-year-old John Smith. There could not have been. Instead of love, her life was defined by tragedy. She was abducted by the English colonists, held hostage, forcibly converted to Christianity, and married off to another Englishman, John Rolfe. She was then transported to England, exhibited as a civilized savage, a living advertisement in a campaign to attract new colonists. Shortly thereafter, at the age of just 21, she died of an unknown illness. Many of her tribe were certain she was poisoned. A story of a child, a victim of colonial violence, was taken and twisted into a romantic fable that retroactively justifies the actions of the invaders. The cynicism is no less apparent in the story that became The Lion King. The film is purportedly based on Shakespeare's Hamlet, but its true roots run deeper into the soil of Africa itself.
If you think you've seen everything, wait. What comes next will turn everything up.
Its origins lie in the epic of Sundiata Keita, the founder of the great Mali Empire in the 13th century. Assur was a powerful king, and his adversary, the sorcerer king Sumaoro Kante, became the archetype for the villainous Scar. Sundiata returned from exile, united his people, and crushed the usurper. But this foundational African story was systematically purged of any mention of Africa, its people, or their culture, replaced entirely by talking animals. A national epic was appropriated, repackaged, and sold to the world without ever crediting the source. The same pattern emerges with Mulan. The original ballad of Hua Mulan tells of a woman warrior who fights for her country for 12 long years. The cinematic version, however, could not proceed without a requisite love interest and a comical dragon sidekick. But in some older, more somber versions of the legend, Mulan's story does not end in triumph. She returns from war to find her family destitute and the emperor demanding she become his concubine. Unwilling to accept this fate, she takes her own life. This is not mere adaptation. It is a process of erasure. Tragedies are sanitized, cultures are devalued, and in their place, a beautiful falsehood is sold to the world, wrapped in the comforting guise of family values. The stories we are told shape our understanding of the world, but perhaps the histories that are deliberately forgotten shape it even more. You believe you know the stories of Cinderella, of Snow White, of the Little Mermaid, but you know only their gilded, polished reflections. The original folk tales, particularly as recorded by the brothers Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen, were not children's entertainment. They were brutal, cautionary parables, etched in blood and suffering. Consider Cinderella. In the Grimm version, when the prince arrives with the glass slipper, one stepsister, desperate to make it fit, severs her own toe. The other hacks off her heel. Blood in the slipper betrays their deceit. But the true horror is reserved for the finale. At Cinderella's wedding, enchanted doves descend from the sky and peck out the sisters' eyes as punishment for their wickedness. There is no forgiveness, only retribution. In the world of Snow White, the malevolent queen does not simply fall from a cliff. At Snow White's wedding feast, she is forced to don a pair of iron shoes, heated in coals until they glow red hot. She is made to dance in them, on and on, until she collapses, dead. This is not a simple demise, it is a public, agonizing execution. And Sleeping Beauty, in an early version penned by Giambattista Basile, is more terrifying still. The prince discovers the sleeping princess, but he does not wake her with a kiss. He assaults her in her sleep. She awakens only 9 months later, as she gives birth to twins. One of the infants, searching for her breast, instead sucks the poisoned splinter from her finger. Her ordeal, however, is far from over. The prince's mother is revealed to be an ogress, who then plots to devour her own grandchildren. Hans Christian Andersen's tale of the Little Mermaid is not a hymn to love, but a tragedy of self-annihilation. The sea witch does not merely take her voice, she cuts out her tongue. Every step she takes on her new legs inflicts a torturous pain, as if she were walking on the blades of knives. The prince treats her as a charming pet, forcing her to dance for his amusement despite her suffering, and ultimately marries another. To save herself, she must kill the prince with his own wedding dagger. She cannot, and so she dissolves into sea foam, condemned to serve for 300 years as an ethereal spirit, merely for the chance to earn an immortal soul. From these grim chronicles of agony, violence, and despair, a modern mythology was born. The Walt Disney Company took these narratives and distilled them into sweet musicals, promising that love always conquers all. In the originals, love was more often a path to ruin. This transformation extends beyond human tales. Disney's films taught generations that friendship can overcome any instinct, that nature is a kingdom of harmony. The books on which they were based speak a harsher truth, that nature is a relentless struggle for survival, and within it, humanity is the most fearsome predator of all. Take Bambi. The film from 1942 shocked audiences with the death of the fawn's mother. But the book by Felix Salten, written in 1922, is no mere sad story. It is a somber allegory, interpreted by many scholars as a narrative of the Jewish experience in an anti-Semitic Europe. Salten himself was a Jew, and he watched as the shadows of hatred lengthened across the continent. In his forest, man is not a character, but an unseen, terrifying force, a harbinger of indiscriminate death. Perhaps the stories we tell are not meant to reflect the world as it is, but as we wish it to be. We sand down the jagged edges and mute the screams, not for our children, but for ourselves.
Stay with me, because what comes next has been hidden for a very long time, and only a few people know the truth behind it.
Seek a simple moral in a world that offers none, a gentle fable to shield us from the unforgiving truth. The fairy tale, in the end, reveals less about the darkness of the past and more about the fears that haunt us still. In the original text, the forest is not a kingdom but a ghetto. Its inhabitants are not princes and princesses, but the defenseless and the hunted. The force they call only him is a faceless, omnipotent power, an agent of death and destruction. The pages are filled with a brutality that would never reach the screen. Foxes and ferrets tear pheasants apart, and a young Bambi, consumed by rage, nearly kills his own rival. This is a world with no room for interspecies friendship, only a foundation of eternal fear. Consider the story of a fox and a hound. The animated classic is a touching tale of a friendship that defies instinct. In the novel by Daniel P. Mannix, the reality is far more tragic. The bond between the fox, Todd, and the puppy, Copper, exists only in the fleeting innocence of their youth. Upon growing up, Copper becomes what he was bred to be, a merciless hunting dog. During one hunt, Todd, fleeing for his life, leads the chase to a set of railway tracks. There, Copper's mentor, a dog named Chief, is struck and killed by a train. Consumed by a lust for revenge, Copper's master pursues Todd to the point of absolute exhaustion, hunting the fox until its heart...
If you think you've seen everything, wait. What comes next will turn everything upside down.
Gives out and it drops dead. But the cruelty does not end there. In the novel's final pages, the master is sent to a nursing home. No longer having a use for his loyal hound, he takes his rifle and cold-bloodedly shoots Copper. There is no hope, only a cycle of senseless violence. Even Kipling's The Jungle Book is a world away from the carefree version on film. In one early script, personally overseen by Walt Disney, the hunter Buldeo sets the jungle ablaze to smoke out Mowgli, only to be killed by the tiger Shere Khan. Mowgli, rather than outsmarting his foe, then takes the hunter's rifle and shoots the tiger dead. Time and again, complex, tragic works were taken and eviscerated, leaving only a bright, hollow shell. And now we approach the secrets the corporation itself would wish to bury forever. Secrets that connect the world of fantasy to the darkest chapters of 20th century history. Recall the Flight to the Moon attraction in Tomorrowland, a monument to optimism and the future. Its chief consultant was Wernher von Braun, the brilliant rocket scientist who helped America win the space race. But before he worked for NASA and Disney, von Braun was a Sturmbannführer in the SS. He was a key creator of the Nazi vengeance weapon, the V-2 rocket. These instruments of terror, which claimed thousands of lives in London and Antwerp, were built by the hands of concentration camp prisoners. Von Braun personally selected slave laborers from the factories where men died from starvation and inhuman toil. The man who helped Walt Disney dream of the stars was a war criminal, his hands soaked in blood. But the collaboration with questionable figures did not end there. From 1940 until his death, Walt Disney was a paid informant for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. In declassified official documents, he is listed by the title Special Agent Correspondent. The most enchanting dreams, it seems, can be built upon the most unsettling truths. The brightest of lights often cast the darkest of shadows, leaving us to question what other realities lie just beneath the surface of the stories we choose to believe. In the aftermath of the 1941 animators' strike, an event he perceived as a communist conspiracy, Walt Disney began a second clandestine career. He became an informant. He fed the Federal Bureau of Investigation a steady stream of information. The names of union organizers, actors, and screenwriters suspected of un-American activities were passed into the hands of the state, their careers and lives systematically dismantled. In exchange, he received the patronage of the formidable FBI director J. Edgar Hoover, even gaining the unprecedented privilege of filming inside the Bureau's sacrosanct headquarters. The creator of Mickey Mouse, the very symbol of the American dream, was a secret agent, spying on his own. But a more visceral darkness lies within the company's treatment of living creatures. In 1958, Disney released a documentary titled White Wilderness. It would win an Academy Award. It also contained a sequence that would, for decades, embed a complete fiction into the public consciousness, the myth of lemming mass suicide. The footage is unforgettable. Hundreds of the small rodents, seemingly gripped by a collective madness, plunge from a high cliff into the sea below. It was a spectacle of nature's brutal, inexplicable drive. But more than 20 years later, an investigation by Canadian journalists uncovered the truth. The entire scene was a fabrication. The sequence was filmed in Alberta, a Canadian province where lemmings are not even native. The film crew had purchased a few dozen of the animals from local children. To create the illusion of a panicked migration, they herded the terrified creatures onto a spinning, snow-covered turntable. Then, for the climactic shot, They were simply forced off a cliff into a river below, where they drowned. For the sake of a dramatic frame and an Oscar, dozens of living beings were coldly sacrificed, birthing a lie that persists in our culture to this day. Political denunciations, manufactured cruelty, these are not merely secrets, they are threads woven into the fabric of an empire, leading to the man whose name became synonymous with magic, but whose shadow still looms over his creation. Above the fire station on Main Street in Disneyland, there is a small apartment. It was Walt Disney's personal refuge. Whenever he was in the park, a lamp would burn in the window, a signal that the master of the kingdom was home. Walt died in...
Welcome to my channel. If you're fascinated by hidden truths, lost civilizations, and unsolved mysteries, you're in the right place. Make sure to subscribe and leave a like so you don't miss what's coming next. Because...
1966, but the light in that window never went out. Shortly after his death, a custodian entered the apartment and, following protocol, switched off the lamp. As she left, she saw it was on again. She returned, turned it off once more, and in the silence of the empty room, she heard a quiet voice. "I am still here." Ever since, the lamp in the window of his apartment has remained eternally lit. It is not merely a tribute. The park's employees believe it is a demand from Walt himself. His spirit, they say, never left its most beloved creation. Stories of his ghost are not isolated legends. There are dozens. His footsteps are heard at night in the locked apartment. His figure was reportedly captured on surveillance cameras in 2009, a semi-transparent silhouette walking through the empty park after dark, passing through locked gates to survey his domain. Some dismiss it as a trick of the light, a fleeting anomaly. But for those who see it, the movement is too certain, too proprietary. It is the walk of a man inspecting his work, a founder forever bound to the world he built, a kingdom of joy haunted by the unending presence of its complicated king. It is said that he was a man obsessed with control, a singular, unyielding vision that governed every sketch, every frame of film, every manicured bush in the kingdom he was building. He monitored his employees, collaborating with government agencies to ensure ideological purity within his walls. He curated a new American mythology, crafting an illusion so potent the entire world chose to believe it. This was not merely artistry, it was the architecture of perception. And for a man who commanded such dominion over his world, it seems even death was an insufficient barrier to his influence. He constructed a kingdom intended to be eternal, and in doing so, he became its eternal phantom sovereign. So, the next time you stand on Main Street and your gaze drifts upward to the single illuminated window above the fire station, understand what you are seeing. It is not just a lamp left burning as a tribute, it is a sign, a quiet declaration that the master has not left his residence. The Empire of Dreams was built by a man who refused to wake up, and in the perpetual glow of that window, one must wonder if he ever truly did.